Now, the head of the United Nations says that, quote, total lawlessness and chaos in Gaza is preventing the distribution of humanitarian aid. Secretary-General Antonio Guterres telling reporters on Friday that, quote, most of the trucks with humanitarian aid inside Gaza are now looted and called the war, quote, different from any other. The statement seems to somewhat echo the comments by Israel that aid is coming into Gaza, but that it's being taken by terrorist groups, never really making it to those civilians in need. A lot of information and developments here over the last 48 hours in the Middle East. So I do want to bring in Clifford May, the founder and president of the Foundation for Defensive Democracies, to help break it all down. Thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to be here with us today.
Very good to be with you, Josh.
All right, so first off, I do want to get your take on the comments there by the UN chief. What do you make of those comments?
Well, he is correct that the problem is and has actually been not the supplying of aid into Gaza, but the fact that it gets looted once in. There were drivers who have brought it in and have gotten shot, have had to run away from their trucks. But what he is failing to say is who is doing most of the looting. And most of the looting is being done by Hamas. And what Hamas does is take what it needs for its leaders who are hiding in the extravagant and expensive tunnels under Gaza. Other aid they may sell, you can see it being sold. We've seen pictures of this in the various marketplaces. So it's good he is mentioning the fact that the aid is sufficient. Good he is mentioning the fact that it's being looted, but he should identify who is doing the looting. And again, most of the looting, we believe, is being done by Hamas.
And I do want to pull up a post here. This is on X or Twitter, and it's from Antonio Guterres, where he talked a little bit about the situation that is going on between Hezbollah and Israel right now. He warned of destruction, quote, beyond imagination if Lebanon becomes, quote, another Gaza. If Israel and Hezbollah declare war, what might happen overall to Lebanon? Do we have any idea?
I think we do, and I don't think he's wrong, though he's not putting the blame where it belongs. Hezbollah began on October 8th, the day after the massacres that Hamas committed, and it's following its invasion of Israel. Hezbollah has been sending rockets and drones to hit cities, towns, villages, farms, communities in northern Israel. As a result, more than 60,000 Israelis have been displaced from their cities, villages, and their homes. This continues. If at some point the Israelis will have to do something serious about that. They've killed quite a few Hezbollah leaders. They've done so with very targeted strikes. If there is a full-out war, it'll be very damaging from Israel, much worse than what we've seen as a result of the war with Hamas. But I think it will be ruinous for Lebanon. I don't see any other way around it. Part of what's happened, and here's what else Gutierrez fails to mention, is there have been 2 UN resolutions, UN Security Council resolutions, very different from the General Assembly. This has some meaning. And what those resolutions said is that there should be a ceasefire, and after the 2006 war with Hezbollah, after the Israelis pulled out in 2000 from southern Lebanon, but Hezbollah must be disarmed. Hezbollah cannot have any weapons in southern Lebanon. The Lebanese armed forces can. The Lebanese armed forces should disarm the militia that is Hezbollah. These UN resolutions, which are meant to bring peace between Lebanon and Israel, there are no disputes over territory between them, really. These resolutions were never enforced. More than 15,000, now probably about 10,000 UN so-called peacekeepers failed to disarm Hezbollah, failed to report that, oh, Hezbollah is bringing weapons, missiles into mosques, schools, homes, etc. They just kind of watched. Sometimes they made it convenient because Hezbollah would put missiles right near UN stations, make it harder for the Israelis to strike them. And the Lebanese armed forces, supported by the U.S., have been too weak, too intimidated, too scared to do anything about the Hezbollah militias, which are stronger than most armies. So this is a very dangerous situation, dangerous for Israel, ruinous for Lebanon, which is in deep debt and in many ways a failing state, thanks to Hezbollah over the years. Very dangerous situation. Gutierrez is not doing anything effectively about it.
And I do have to ask because the U.S. officials have, several of them have said there's concerns that Hezbollah's rocket fire, their weapons could actually overwhelm the Iron Dome and the aerial defense that Israel does use to protect itself. My question, is that a real possibility that the Iron Dome and aerial systems could really be overwhelmed?
Yeah, I think it's a real possibility. We're talking about something like 150,000 rockets and missiles. Maybe 10% of them are what's called precision guided missiles, which, in other words, Iron Dome works very well when it kind of predicts the trajectory of a rocket and sees where it's going to land. Harder to do, almost not impossible, harder to do with a precision guided missile. So what Israel needs are more interceptors. Israel needs more weapons. The stronger Israel is, the more likely that Hezbollah will be deterred. All Hezbollah needs to do is stop rocketing northern Israel so people can feel safe and go home. All they need to do is comply with the UN Security Council resolutions to which they agreed in 2006 and 2000. The U.S. should understand, I'm not entirely always sure the U.S., this administration does, that a strong Israel deters, a weak Israel provokes. If you don't want a war, you want to make Israel stronger, not weaker. That's kind of national security 101.
When we talk about comments that have been made over the past week, we did actually hear, I believe it was yesterday, from Hamas's leader in Qatar, who said that Hamas is open to a ceasefire deal that would end the war completely. However, is Israel ever going to agree to that? Because it sounds as though Israel has said the goal of this war is to eliminate Hamas.
Good question. I can't speak for Israel, but I'll speculate and say that I do think it's possible that if all the hostages who have been held by all these 9 months in terrible conditions, no Red Cross allowed to see them, nothing, if they were all released, I can easily imagine Israel saying, okay, ceasefire, we're not fighting anymore in Gaza. We are concerned with Hezbollah, we'll turn our attention there. There would be one caveat. They'd say this must be a two-way, not a one-way ceasefire. So if you release the hostages, and we say, okay, we've done enough damage to Hamas, let the country, let Gaza rebuild. If we are attacked again by Hamas, if there are more missiles, if there are more invasions, well, that ends the ceasefire and we will have to begin again. I'm not saying they will do that. I can't say that. I am saying I can imagine, and if you listen to the discourse in Israel and the arguments that you have between the Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister, and the kind of security establishment, I can imagine it's not an unimaginable scenario. Hamas releases all the hostages, Israel backs off within a few days, perhaps, from Rafah and wherever else it is, turns its attention to the north and says, we're not going to, it's a ceasefire again like it was on October 6th, but hit us again and we're back.
And I have to ask, because one thing that has been discussed a lot over the past several months is Hamas using civilians there in Gaza as human shields. And we actually did learn from the IDF just, I would say, a day or so ago that they found a rocket launch site, a site that would set up a rocket launcher there in a humanitarian zone. So my question for you, is that more evidence of these civilians being used as human shields?
It is more evidence that civilians are being used as human shields. We have abundant evidence about that. By the way, Hamas doesn't deny that. Hamas brags about it. They don't call them human shields. They say they're martyrs for the cause, and they should be willing to do this. The Israelis have sometimes found that when they warn, as they have done on a regular basis, Gazans said, hey, this building, we know there's a command and control headquarters. We want you to leave so we can destroy the command and control headquarters. Sometimes Gazans do get out. Sometimes, and they call them on the phone. We have this evidence. They'll say, no, we're going to stay here to protect it. If you want to destroy this command and control headquarters, you will have to kill us. They are Hamas loyalists. They are true believers. That happens. The use of human shields, the use of civilians, and the deaths of civilians is part of Hamas's war strategy, has been from the beginning. Everyone knows that. And by the way, under international law and under American law, the use of human shields is prohibited. Even though Hamas is not a full state actor, the laws of armed conflict are meant to apply. They do not. And sadly, Gutierrez at the UN and others at the UN really don't try to make Hamas abide by the basic standards that any armed conflict should entail. The Israelis, I think, do more than their best. We have people like John Spencer, West Point, who have said they've gone beyond. The Israelis are going beyond what any military in history has ever done to protect civilians. But there will be collateral damage in a war like this in urban areas.
On the same note, we did hear from the IDF that a Gaza university had apparently been used as a terrorist headquarters there, and they found a whole arsenal of weapons. So just based on what we're hearing from the IDF, is any of that surprising?
It shouldn't be surprising. We certainly know it now. The Israelis, I don't know how aware they were from intelligence sources before the current war, but yes, Hamas strategically uses hospitals, mosques, schools, universities to store weapons. They have tunnels under them. These tunnels, billions of dollars. I mean, the money that has been pouring into Gaza since the Israelis withdrew 100% 2005. Hamas took over fully in 2007. Huge amounts of money. So you could have turned Gaza into kind of a Dubai, a kind of a Singapore, or something like that. Instead, they built this fortress underground and prepared for this war, while the international quote unquote donor community sent in huge amounts of money, and the UN provided social services for Gazans. So in the same hospitals where you have command and control, you also have the World Health Organization, you have other UN agencies, UN Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, and others providing these services. Hamas doesn't want to provide services for the people it ruled in Gaza because it wanted to and did prepare for the current war, and a genocidal war. It is, as Hamas freely states, and as is very clearly stated in the Hamas charter. And we should never forget Hamas is a proxy of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Hezbollah is really a foreign legion of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Houthi rebels in Yemen, who have just sunk a Greek merchant ship, they are proxies of the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's, if you want to get to the root cause of the problem, you want to get to the swamp, not just hit the alligators and mosquitoes coming out of the swamp. You have got to look towards Tehran. And the current administration has been reluctant to do that. They keep thinking, we can make a deal with them, we can bribe them, we can seduce them, we can sweet talk them. Hasn't worked.
My last question for you here. The New York Times reporting that it's obtained a recording of Israel's finance minister telling settler supporters that the government is engaged in some kind of secret effort to change the way that Israel governs the West Bank. Can you explain who controls the West Bank right now?
It's a little complex, but to make it real simple, under the Oslo Accords, there's an agreement between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority is meant to govern the West Bank. But it's not like Gaza, where the Israelis withdrew completely. There are 3 areas in the West Bank. Most of the population, places in the big cities like Ramallah, they're in Area A, 100% governed by the Palestinian Authority. You won't see Israelis in those places, except kind of if you watch Fauda, if there's a terrorist cell plotting something, they may come in and try to get the cell if the Palestinian Authority hasn't. Areas B and C are different. It's sort of a split of governing and security responsibilities between the Israelis and the Palestinian Authority, which is again by agreement who governs the West Bank. And a very important point: when people say, "Oh, Israel is an apartheid state," it makes no sense, because in Israel you have Arab Israeli citizens who vote, who are doctors, who go to universities, who serve on the courts. You can't say it. So, well, yes, but what about the West Bank? Well, again, in the West Bank, they can vote. They have their own government. It's called the Palestinian Authority. They can vote, although the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, he ran for one 4-year term about 19 years ago, and he's never gone back to the voters to say, hey, reelect me. He's just stayed in power. But there's no more reason for Palestinians in the West Bank to vote, say, in Israel, than there is for Israelis to vote in the West Bank.
All right. Clifford May, founder and president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. We really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
Well, there's always so much, and you're gracious to ask me. Look, I do think we need to be focusing on the border between Lebanon and Israel, because if that war breaks out, that will be a ruinous war on both sides. The U.S. is trying to come up with a diplomatic solution. Very hard to do. A lot depends on what Iran wants, because Hezbollah and its leader Nasrallah, who also, by the way, lives mostly in a bunker, protected, because he knows if there's a war, Israel will target him as best they can. Is Nasrallah willing to sacrifice Lebanon, use Lebanon as, in effect, a human shield against Israel? What is he being told by Tehran? Are they guiding him or are they instructing him? We don't know any of that. But again, the best way to prevent a full-blown war between Israel and Hezbollah is if Hezbollah feels we can't win it, the Israelis are too strong, they're backed by the U.S. It's also vital, I think, that both America's allies and adversaries around the world see that America backs its allies and challenges its adversaries. Otherwise, you end up with situations that we've seen in other places where America is challenged, where there is aggression. We've got Putin waging a war to subjugate the Ukrainians. We've got Xi Jinping threatening to subjugate the Taiwanese. And of course, we've got Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas threatening to exterminate the Israelis. This is not a good situation. A strong America is preferable. Peace through strength, I think, should still be the operative strategy for the U.S.
All right, Clifford, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and break it all down. As you mentioned, there is a lot to discuss. So again, thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Josh. Pleasure.
All right, I do want to take you back out to this post here from the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, who posted on Twitter, "I feel compelled to voice my profound concerns about escalation between Israel and Hezbollah along the blue line. The risk for the conflict in the Middle East to widen is real and must be avoided," he says. "The people of the region and the world cannot afford Lebanon to become another Gaza."